This video is brought to you by True Tales of Buried Treasure, the largest collection of old treasure magazines in the West. We're pleased to announce that we are now selling our physical magazines directly on our website. You can browse by magazine title or search for a particular issue using the search bar. To pay us a visit, please click the link in the description. Enjoy. Montana is a land of mountains, rivers, and wide open skies. But beneath its beauty lies something else: secrets of gold long lost, treasures swallowed by earthquakes, and caches hidden by men who never lived to recover them. Some of these stories are rooted in cold, hard history. Others blur the line between legend and truth, but all of them share one thing in common. Somewhere in Montana, treasure is still waiting to be found. Gold has always been a paradox in the American West. No matter how many times they struck it rich, most prospectors died poor. They were surface miners, men and women who stumbled onto glittering nuggets, scooped up what they could carry, and then sold their claims for a few $100 or $1,000. And while they spent their quick profits in saloons and dance halls, wiser and more determined men took over the claims, raised money from backers, and went on to make millions. One story captures this pattern perfectly. Around the turn of the century, 4 prospectors in Cascade County, Montana, sold a claim about 5 miles northwest of Nyhart. With money in their pockets, they did what so many others before them had done. They celebrated the sale by going on a bender. They drank their way from Nyhart down toward the small town of Barker, where one of them, Richard Odie, owned a home. Halfway there, they made camp. Odie, perhaps more sober or simply more curious than the others, picked up some unusual ore samples and tucked them into his pack. By the time they reached Barker, he had the rocks assayed, and the results nearly knocked him off his feet. The ore ran an incredible $8,000 a ton. Sober now, the men raced back up the trail, desperate to find the exact ravine where Odie had plucked those samples. But the mountains are unforgiving. Days turned into weeks as they scoured the slopes, searching every cut and crevice. They found the general area of their camp, but never the precise spot. Finally, defeated, they gave up and moved on. Odie's ravine vanished into legend, joining the long roll of lost ledges. Yet, this one was different. Most lost ledges of the gold rush days were rediscovered quietly by other miners. But Odie's ravine was lost after the rush had ended. There were fewer prospectors in the hills, fewer chances for someone to stumble upon it by accident. That makes the odds high that Odie's gold still waits out there today, untouched since that drunken night more than a century ago. But not all of Montana's lost treasure tales come from forgotten claims. Some were swallowed whole by the earth itself. On the night of August 17, 1959, the ground around West Yellowstone shook with the fury of a 7.8 earthquake. It was one of the most violent quakes in Montana history. The shockwaves ripped across Yellowstone National Park and the Gallatin National Forest, toppling cabins, snapping highways in two, and terrifying hundreds of vacationers. In Madison Canyon, the quake unleashed a 20-foot-high wall of water. It thundered down the narrow gorge, tearing through campgrounds and dude ranches. At Rock Creek Campground, 80 million tons of mountain rock collapsed, damming the river and sending the wave back into the valley like a slingshot. Cars and trees were tossed like twigs. Hurricane-force winds stripped the clothes from campers' backs. 300 people were trapped. 28 never made it out alive. Survivors clung to the tops of half-submerged trees through the long, terrifying night. By morning, rescuers fought their way in and managed to save most of the vacationers. But the losses were staggering. Homes, cars, jewelry, keepsakes' entire lives were swallowed by the earth. To this day, much of that property lies buried beneath rock slides, floods, and gaping holes in the canyon floor. And while laws rightly protect national forest lands and demand that identifiable property be returned to its owners or heirs, the fact remains: when the earth takes something, it sometimes gives it back again. Which means, for the determined searcher, Madison Canyon may still hide untold relics of that fateful night. From nature's fury, let's turn back to the men who once filled Montana's gulches with gold fever and the quiet caches they left behind. Just outside the ghost town of Garnet lies a spot known as the Chinese Grade. The name comes from an old story. A Chinese miner who once worked the diggings there is said to have hidden a 5-pound tin of gold dust. He never lived to reclaim it. That small detail was preserved in Lambert Florin's classic Ghost Towns of the West, a massive work cataloging dozens of mining towns across the frontier. Florin gave historical sketches of 27 Montana camps alone, and Garnet was only one of them. What's important here is this. For every miner's cache that makes it into print, there are dozens more that were never recorded, never whispered to outsiders. They remain hidden still, waiting in cellars, under floors, and buried in shallow graves of earth. If just one tin of gold dust can leave behind a century-old legend, imagine how many other forgotten stashes may still lie undiscovered in Montana's hills. And some stories remind us that miners were more than just dreamers and drifters. Some built lives and families here, leaving behind not only gold, but legacies. Joseph Knowles struck it rich during the Bannock gold rush of the 1860s. Like many miners of the day, he married a native woman and settled down in Beaverhead County, in the town of Dillon. Men like him were called squawmen at the time, a crude term for white miners who married into native families. But not all of them remained on the fringes. Some, like Knowles, became respected citizens. They bridged two cultures, raised families, and laid down roots in the communities that grew from Montana's mining frontier. While Knowles's gold strike brought him wealth, it was his choice to stay, to marry, and to build a life that secured his place in history. And so Montana's treasure stories weave together a remarkable tapestry. From Odie's lost ravine, still waiting to be rediscovered, to the Madison Canyon quake, where valuables were swallowed by earth and flood, to the Chinese grade and its unclaimed tin of gold dust. And finally to Joseph Knowles, whose true legacy was not just in the gold he found, but in the family he built. Each story reminds us that treasure is more than just glittering metal. Sometimes it's a lost ledge in the mountains. Sometimes it's heirlooms buried beneath a landslide. Sometimes it's a forgotten cache. And sometimes it's the life a miner chose to build when the fever of gold finally faded. Montana's hills still whisper these stories, and who knows, for those willing to listen and to search, they may yet reveal their secrets. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to read the original article or purchase the magazine from which it was taken, please check out our website, truetalesofburiedtreasure.com.